Hello and welcome to the Property Investors Podcast. My name is Tom Webster.
And I'm Rob Holmes.
And we have just probably had one of the most perfect guests. So as in, if everything that we wanted from a guest, Ying Tan had everything. He's got the inspirational story. He's got the sort of a rags to riches type style in it. He invested heavily in property, but he's also a business owner. It's literally all the things that me and Rob really enjoy and hope that the listeners enjoy. Ying had all of it.
Yeah, he was a really, really interesting guy. The obviously being in financial services, being an investment banker, how he's built that property portfolio up, how that property portfolio kept him afloat during bad times. How he's reinvested that money. So it was very, very interesting, and some good lessons there as well for people in property or looking to get into property.
Yeah, I wanted to get, I actually, confession, I actually tried to get Ying on the show season 1. So he's been a guest that I've really wanted on for a long time because I know he's got an interesting story. I've never met him before. I've never spoken to him before, but just from in the industry, he's a big name in the industry, in sort of like the financial service industry. And I just knew that he was the type of guest that I wanted to get on. So I messaged him, it must have been a couple of years ago now, and he was like, no. And then I messaged him again because he's just brought out a book called Don't Push Too Many Trolleys. And I thought, right, now I'm going to get him, because everyone likes to get on a podcast when they got a book coming out. But it was genuinely the other way around. It's me thinking, actually, I can get him on because, but it worked out perfectly because he was exactly what I wanted him to be. He's such an inspirational guy. It's actually, to be honest with you, better than I thought it was going to be, which is always a nice place to be. As I knew it was going to be good, but it was actually better than I could have ever hoped for. He was literally ticked all the boxes, like I say, like the rags to riches stuff. He talks about how his dad goes from Malaysia to the UK, sort of, was it 50 odd years ago, backpack 4 months or something, travels the whole world to get here, and I won't ruin the whole story, but some inspirational things happen along the way, and that sort of sets him up in the UK. And then obviously Ying's taking a lot of inspiration.
And a lot of the lessons that he learned from his dad and from him, where people have helped him when he was younger, that have actually inspired him and molded him to who he is today. And even little lessons from people that you might not think he would remember make him who he is today, which is really nice.
And it's nice to hear the appreciation and the warmth in his voice when he talks about these people that have made massive differences to him, that they don't realize just by doing these small acts of kindness has helped him get to where he is today, which is extremely successful. And I love that, because we can all forget, do you know, that someone can just do like a flippantly nice thing to somebody, just thinking, oh, I'll just do that. But you don't realize the impact that nice thing could have on somebody's life and the butterfly effect that sort of carries on. I think that's sort of a bit of a theme for the show a little bit, wasn't it? Is this whole butterfly effect of doing good ultimately ends up doing more. But I won't ruin everything. I'll let you listen to the full show. If you want to follow us, you can catch us on all the socials at Podcast Property. Visit the website podcastproperty.co.uk. You can contact me and Rob from there. Obviously, like I said, all the socials. Please do leave reviews, like, subscribes, all those sort of things. So that's my shameless plug done. Hope you really enjoy the show. Thank you so much for listening, and enjoy Ying Tan. Good morning, Ying. How are you?
Good morning, Tom. I'm very well. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend?
Yes, I did. It was Chinese New Year. So we had a little gathering once at the family household. We have what's called a steamboat. So it's a little bit like a hot pot where you put food in, and then everyone sits around the table and it kind of cooks the food. So that was nice, and something we only do once a year. Oh, and of course, it was Valentine's as well. But being married as long as I have, it's not quite as exciting as maybe in my teenage years.
And Kunye Fat Joy?
Yeah, thank you. Kunye Fat Joy to you. Very good. Look at you.
Look at me. Look, I'm really impressed with myself there.
He didn't tell me about that one.
There you go.
He's pulled that one out of the bag.
Pulled that one out like a rabbit out of a hat.
Do you know, I know that was, my mum went to Hong Kong. I've got to be like 20 odd years ago, and it was just before Hong Kong went back to China, and she went there for obviously Chinese New Year, and that's the one thing she come back with, and the one thing she remembered, and it's the one thing that I've remembered forever.
There you go. Yeah, that's good.
So what we like to do is we like to ask our guests to introduce themselves. You can sort of go back to childhood and just explain who you are and how you've got to who you are today. and then we'll just sort of develop the conversation from there, mate.
Sure, happy to help.
So,
Good.
go
Well,
for it.
yeah, well, I mean, you said go back to childhood. I may even be able to go a little bit further back there, because I think it's quite an important part on what has made me who I am, and that's my father. My father came to the UK 1959 as a young 21-year-old. He came as a hitchhiker, backpacker. So he literally, had 20 quid in his pocket, got his rucksack on. He was a Boy Scout, and kind of went with a mate and kind of ventured around. I mean, that's the whole podcast in itself, but long story short, it was about 4 or 5 months. He almost died once or twice. He got attacked. He got thrown in jail, and he ran out of money many times, and he had to swap his watch for a jacket to keep warm. Slept under railway bridges. So quite an inspiring story. But
That's
one
incredible.
thing that he has done is he had that amazing perseverance, tenacity, and determination to keep going, and he never looked back. Not once did it cross his mind to go back. And that kind of those sacrifices, I guess. He was the eldest of 12 children, and those sacrifices he made, and the kind of the opportunity he gave myself, and therefore my generations to come, has what's inspired me to kind of be the person I am today. We're never very wealthy. We grew up in quite a tough environment, in council estate, etc. So my parents had to have 2 jobs. At times they were, couldn't afford an oven in the early days, and they were cooking, chicken, rolling it by the radiator so it would slow cook. So times were quite tough, and I think that but then I never was left wanting. So I think that what my parents gave me was that unbelievable desire to make sure that I could give to my children. So I've always been very driven, and I've been very aware of the sacrifices and hard work my parents got, and always wanted to make sure I didn't let them down. And I guess that to a degree formed my why. Sadly, my parents died in the last couple of years.
Sorry to hear that, mate.
Yeah, thank you. But my why is now my own family. I've got a beautiful wife and 5 children. Which is not an easy thing to do, especially when you're running a business in a lockdown with homeschooling, etc. So that's kind of given me the drive and ambition. And I guess moving into kind of my working environment and my business world, I'm ex-investment banking. I worked at Deutsche Bank, UBS, Goldman Sachs. I was one of the youngest vice presidents of Goldman Sachs at the age of 26. I was qualified accountant at 23, so I'd always done pretty well. But September the 11th came in 2001, or September the 10th. And at the time I was in New York, and I was staying very close by the Twin Towers. And my boss at the time asked me to go back. So I went back, grunting a little bit, because I thought I'd still had an unfinished business in America. And then obviously the atrocities that happened the next day, September 11th, it just kind of made me reflect and say, okay, do I want to continue my career in investment banking, or do I want to chase my ambition and my dream to be an entrepreneur and to run a business? And I decided to quit investment banking, and I went full-time into property. I was lucky enough, I was on a good salary in investment banking. Every time I got a bonus, I'd buy a property, I'd get a mortgage out, and I got involved in buy-to-let in 1997 at the age of 21. And I built up quite a substantial property portfolio by the time I quit investment banking in 2001. And for the next 4 or 5 years to 2006, I was a full-time landlord. But I dealt a lot with developers, architects, tenants, and I was living 6 months in the UK, 6 months in Asia, almost like a retired life. And I'm thinking, God, I'm still in my mid to late 20s. I need to, think about, do I want to keep doing this or what? And so I missed the buzz of the city, but no, I didn't want to go back to the city. So I set the business up, or my business, the buy-to-let business. And that was in 2006. It was just me, myself, and I in a small Regis office in Guildford. I kind of grew it since then. And I guess fast forward at the largest, we're well over 150 staff. Probably about 18 months ago. We're a little bit smaller now because of obviously lockdown and a lot of the streamlining of our process, but we're still over 100 staff. We're dynamic, we're entrepreneurial, innovative. It doesn't really matter if you're a burger flipper from McDonald's or an MBA graduate from Harvard. It's mainly the burger flippers from McDonald's we recruit, because they're the people with the right mindset, attitude, and hunger, and that determination. And I link this back to my father, and if he had given up, and one of the things I always tell and impress on my staff is that don't give up, because you don't just give up on yourself, you give up on everyone around you. Because if my dad hadn't pursued that journey, firstly, I wouldn't be here, and the business wouldn't be here. And therefore, the impact that I've maybe made on all of these people who I've pulled out from Burger, from McDonald's, and now they're good mortgage consultants may not have happened. So the ripple effect is, when you really start to think about it and look deeply, is quite profound. And that's why it's so important that, I'm a big believer in, follow things through. When you say something, you do it. But we've got now one of the largest mortgage brokers in the UK. Clearly, our DNA initially was in buy-to-let, but that's evolved. We rebranded to Dynamo in 2018, really because we wanted to be known not just for our expertise in buy-to-let, but also second charges, residential, commercial, life insurance, etc. And also we wanted to get a bit more credit for the technology that we built, which our IT director has been influential in doing over the last 10 to 15 years. We got investment from Countrywide, in 2016, which was a good milestone. At the time, FTSE 250 business, and still a very big, powerful property services player. We're very proud of the business that we built. Our culture is really strong. We're multiple award winning, and most recently we've won awards in tech and innovation, as well as the mortgage strategy best mortgage broker in the UK. So really proud of what we've done, but I couldn't do all of this without the team around me, and I'm very blessed to have a very strong management team that's helped me kind of guide the ship, so to speak, to the successes we see now. But I've never forgotten the roots. We're still very passionate about everything we do. I'm very hands-on, as chief exec and founder of the business. I'm not one to step back. I still get my hands dirty, still involved in everything day to day in the business, and there's some exciting times ahead.
Wow.
Sorry, that's a bit of a
fantastic.
Bit of a probably could have spent more or less time in certain areas, but I'm happy to explore any of those.
No, honestly, I was not noting down, but in my head, just thinking to myself, that is probably one of the most impressive intros I think we've had, isn't it, Rob?
It was pretty in depth. It was very, very good. Yeah.
So what we'll do, we'll start decoding some of that, and we'll go into sort of we'll flesh it out a little bit. So if we dial straight back, so if we start from the beginning again, so we say talk about your dad for a bit. So you're saying so he put a backpack on, and was his end journey the UK, or was he just floating around just seeing how life took him?
No, his end journey was the UK. He wanted to come to England. I think then Malaysia, which is where he was originally from, was part of the Commonwealth. So you didn't have to have all the controls that you probably have to have now. So you could just come in, just have your passport and you walk straight into the country. So, and there was about 100 or 200 people from Malaysia that set off on that journey. He went with just one other friend, but he took a boat to, I think it was Sri Lanka, and in Sri Lanka, that's where he kind of started the hitchhiking journey through India, Pakistan, through the Middle East, kind of Greece, Corfu, through Italy in that way. So, yeah, it's and then France, and one of the kind of heartwarming stories is, he'd literally got to France after a 4 or 5 month journey or whatever it was, and he literally run out of money, and he was sat there for a couple of days by the port, and there was a captain that kept walking past him. And the captain had seen him sat there, all depressed for a couple of days. Every time he walked past him, he says, "Son, I've seen you there for the last 2 or 3 days in a row. Why are you doing? What are you doing? Is I've come from Malaysia. I want to get over there, but I've run out of money now. And the fare was like £2. And he said, look, don't worry. Come on my ship, and I'll take you across. But you got to promise to pay me when you get there." And he said, "Of course, that's what I'll do." So. He got on a ship. My dad obviously worked his way to go to the Malaysian High Commission, which was in Malaysia. It's kind of a central place to go in London, and then he managed to get a job at the Cumberland Hotel as like a kitchen hand, and he got the money together, paid the ship captain back. And I think a lot of that's embedded in my DNA, that if you say something, you got to do it. Yeah. And if you promise something to someone, you got to do it. I mean, my dad could not have paid him. I'm sure he wouldn't be able to track my dad down, but you've got to be a man of honor. And he was that person. I have no idea who he is. He gave that key to my dad to get into the UK, and allowed to build a life to give me and my sister the opportunity we've got. So yeah,
it's incredible how one person can make such a difference to one other person, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think, like, and again, without getting psychoanalytic, is I think a part of that's really installed in you, where you're talking about your company culture, you're talking about the impact that you make on people's lives, like that. You can literally pinpoint that and say something happened to your dad, and you've then taken that subconsciously or consciously and thought, actually, I can do that. Yeah. I can make those sorts of impacts, and say like burger flippers to.
that one person, has changed the course of the direction for my dad, therefore me, and therefore lots of other people, and I think that gets lost sometimes. And I think I am a real person that's very passionate about what I do, and I like giving. I'm lucky enough that I've done pretty well in my life with my job, my property portfolio, the business. So I am in a fortunate position where I can give, and I love to give knowledge. I love to give people opportunities, and I think and people are thankful for that. And I think that showing of gratitude is equally as important, and I certainly have in abundance.
Amazing. And then so let's talk about yourself then. So education wise, so did you go to uni? Was that sort of like, did you have a big dream to get into investment banking? Is that was that the path?
I coming from a Asian, Oriental Chinese background, my parents always said, you've got to be a doctor, accountant, a lawyer, etc., etc. So I think I was given some of that guidance, but I studied accounting and finance at Kingston University. It inspired me to be a property landlord, actually, because I in the second year at university, I stayed at Surbiton, which was about a 3 or 4 mile journey from Kingston, and it was a 6-bedroom flat above a retail shop. And I was paying, those days we used to get a grant because of affordability. I was eligible to get a grant. So I'd receive a couple of £1,000 every term. And as soon as I got it in my bank, I'd write a check out to my landlord. And I was thinking, God, he's getting that from me. Plus he's getting it from 6 other people or 5 other people. And he's getting that every term. And I thought, this is pretty good money making. I never saw him. And the place was an absolute dive, probably because of us, being students, partying and drinking and smoking and whatever. And the place was horrible. But, it was, and I thought, if we looked after tenants as if they were clients, then, we'd be able to have a better relationship and better retention. We'd have less void periods. So, again, he probably doesn't know this, but he inspired me to be a landlord, and that's why I bought my first property. When I graduated 6 months later in 1997. So,
tell us on that. Where did you buy your first property?
Yeah,
what was it, and how much did you buy it for? All the way.
Yeah, great story. And I know that very, very clearly. That the property address was 17 Elm Grove Road. It was in Farnborough, which is where I was from. And I rented it to students for the reasons I've just explained. It was a 3-bedroom semi-detached house with 2 receptions. One was a lounge and one was a dining room. I converted them into bedrooms. I had 5 bedrooms. It was before kind of the more strict HMO laws, I guess. And we had a big communal kitchen area, and I charged, I think it was £50 per room per week or something like that. So, times that by 5, you kind of got well over, I think it was £1,200 or whatever the maths is. But my mortgage on it was £400 or £500. And in addition to that, if I'd rented it as a single unit, it would have only been £600-700. So it was great rental income, and it was paying off the capital back. I took a capital repayment at the time, and it was a great property. And and I then, and still to be fair now, I'm a firm believer that it's better to buy your buy-to-lets or your property in a location, A, that B, that it's within distance that you can manage it. Even though you employ a letting agent, I still believe that you have to manage your letting agent, because the letting agent will never quite treat it like it's their own. That was the first property. And I think the other question you asked was the price. I think it was about £72,000. Which was obviously seemed a bloody lot of money back then, but in reflection, I should have bought 10 other buggers.
Especially in Farnborough, it's expensive around there now.
Yeah, it is expensive there now, but I don't have that property anymore, but I do remember selling. I sold it for about £250,000. I think it was about 8 or 9 years ago. So very lucky, I guess you could say. But I'm a big believer in you make your own luck, right? So I was lucky because prices went up. I'm not going to say that I knew prices were going to go up as much as they did in housing, but I made my own luck in that, I went to view 100 properties before I bought that one. I made sure I knew the area. I made sure I knew a bargain when I'd get one, and I was proactive enough to take that plunge, which was, let's face it, I borrowed most of that money from family to get the deposit and from the bank for the majority of it. So, it wasn't a huge amount of money, which was quite a risk because it was quite highly leveraged, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that to all, but that's what I did.
Yeah.
And it paid off.
Out of interest, did you buy that before you bought your own residence?
I did, yeah.
I got the sense that you did.
Yeah.
So that's
I was still living with my parents, and I remember taking my parents around to that property as well. And it was, it was that they obviously, they didn't have a vision of a landlord property, and they just said, "Ying, why are you buying that house, it's absolutely awful. It smells in there. The carpets are green. The wallpaper is flowery. But for me, all I saw was opportunity. I walked in there and I said, well, this is probably a house which is probably worth 5-6 grand more than on the market. I could rent it out, and I did the maths before. I said, well, if I rent each room out for 50 quid, that's 250 quid a month, times that by 5 people. That's, that's 1,500 pounds, whatever it is. That's profit. And that's the way you make money in property before you buy. You do your due diligence. Okay, you know how much you're going to pay for the mortgage. You know how much you're going to borrow. You look at your risk. What are my risk? Well, interest rates could go up. Well, I'll get a fixed rate. Tenancies are going to be void periods. Well, if I put it by a station in a town centre, I'm going to either get, and by the university, then I'm going to get either students or I'm going to get professionals. So that risk is managed. So, as long as you mitigate your risk, you do your numbers, it's a straightforward decision. And that's why for me, it was a no-brainer, even though the place wasn't great. But, that back then I was a bit more hands-on, and I did the painting myself, and saved on the labour fees. But it was a good investment, and that allowed me to then remortgage, pull the money out, buy another property when property prices were going up. From 96, 97 to 2004, 2005. We had a massive bull run, didn't we, in property prices?
Massively, yeah. So again, talking about sort of like personal residence and buy-to-let. So did you keep buying buy-to-lets before you bought your own residence, or was it sort of earlier in the process?
I was working in the city at the time. So my first property I bought in London was to live in was a place in Wimbledon. It was a 2-bedroom flat, which I remember that one as well. It was a 2-bedroom flat, not on Walpole Road, not far from the station. It was about 130,000. Again, it was probably worth 140,000. It's now worth considerably more than that. But I just did it up. I moved in there. I lived there for about 12 months, and then I sold it, making 30-40 grand profit, which was a lot at the time. And then I reinvested it in buying another house in Surrey Quays, which I lived in, and the excess cash which I made, I bought 2 more properties in Farnborough. So that was the beginning of my property portfolio journey.
Love that. So I'm always really interested about the city and investment banking and all that sort of stuff. So are we talking early 2000s or late 90s?
96 to 98, I was at UBS. 98 to just before 2000, I was at Deutsche Bank, and then I was at Goldman Sachs up until just after 2000.
So was it still fun?
Before
regulation come in?
That was great fun. You earn a lot of money. I probably never paid myself the amount of money I was earning at Goldman's anyway, because you don't do that when you run your own business. You kind of pay yourself last because your value is in the business.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great fun. You'd work hard, play hard, I do sometimes look at some of the youth today. Not that I'd encourage it for my own staff, because I wouldn't want them to come in hangover in the office. But we used to go out till 3 o'clock in the morning, and come to work. But one thing I'd say is, no matter what time, no matter how late you go, you've got to get in to work on time, and we're getting work. I'm not sure how productive I was, but I was in work at 8:30. But yeah, it was a great time. But that's why you get burnt out very quickly, because you do enjoy a good life out there, and you paid well. We were given ridiculous amounts of money to entertain clients at lunch. But it was good, well paid, a real eye opener. But there was a reason I left, and I only did it 5 or 6 years, because I'm not sure you could just keep doing that type of way of living.
Yeah, that's got to be heavy. I mean, I was working in recruitment for a while, and we had a big night out, like you're saying, 3-4 o'clock in the morning. Got to the train station. We was in London, and I had to get back to Brighton to start work at start work at 9, but you've got to be in before, and there's no train. So we're sitting at the train station, freezing cold, get on the train, get like first train back to Brighton, sleep all the way, fell asleep under our desks when we got to the office, waiting for the first person to walk through the door was the sales director. And he was evil. Yeah. He was like literally out of everyone to walk through the door. And there's 3 of us, and we're all under our desks sleeping.
It happened a lot in the city, and I've definitely done a fair few of those. And the worst stories I used to hear is people going in the toilet. But of course, toilets had the sensitive lighting. So as soon as you'd move, the lights would go on. So it was hard enough that you were hungover and drunk sleeping in the toilets or whatever. But, with the lights going on every 2 minutes, every time you move wasn't great. So, yeah, good times. It was good times. But, I guess it's no doubt a different world now, certainly in the COVID times we live in. So
yeah, definitely. So if we talk about your transition into sort of the mortgage world.
Yes.
So I don't mean to be offensive, but some would see it almost like a step down, going from investment banking to mortgages, because obviously there's not as much money in it. But, so how did that happen? How was that progression? What was the things that sort of said, actually, do you know what? I can really see the growth in this. I can see there being some vision in this. Because I imagine at the time, people probably thought you were a bit mad leaving one to go to the other sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I left investment banking in 2000, and after September, end of 2001. Then I was a full-time landlord, don't forget, for 4 or 5 years until 2006. Then I set up the buy-to-let business. But I remember I'd never been a mortgage broker when I set the business up. So it wasn't quite going from investment banking to being a mortgage broker. It was going from investment banking to running my own business. It just happened to be in mortgage broking. Mm-hmm. And the reason was very simple, because during those 4 or 5 years when I wasn't working, I was investing in property. I'd built up quite a substantial property portfolio. And I was going to my mortgage broker, telling them what to do, when to do, and how to do it. And I thought, blimey, if this is the best the mortgage world can offer me, then I should set it up myself. And that's what I did. And I set it up 2006, like I said, me, myself, and I in a Regis office in Guildford. And it just grew exponentially. And for the first 2 years, we got up to about 30 staff up until 2008. And I was like, wow, this is heavy. And, I'd already taken a step back from being a mortgage broker. I'd done it, but, I had to run the business and build the business. So I was more the business owner then the credit crunch hit. And that was really tough. I remember lots of Mortgage Express, Capital Home Loans, big buy-to-let players who just suddenly pulled out of the market. And the mortgage market went from a £40 billion market to 8 billion overnight. And it had a massive hit, and we had to make 2 rounds of redundancies. We let natural attrition take its course. I had 2 other directors, which I bought out at the time. And then, it was a crossroads, do I continue or not? Luckily, I had a property portfolio, which the interest rate was, 0.5% bank base rate. So I was able to live on the interest for there, but, not to get the violin out. But I didn't pay myself from 2008 to 2011, but luckily I didn't need to, because I was able to live a simple life anyway on my property portfolio's rental income. And those 2 or 3 years, it was time to reflect. I want to keep doing it. I believed in the business. I believed in the opportunity. My mission statement back then, people are not often asked, did I choose to grow a business as big as it is now? Absolutely. I know some people will they'll start a business, then they realize they're good at it, and they'll stumble across building an empire. But I always had that vision, and the vision and the mission statement then and to this day still is to be respected by the clients and the marketplace as the leading mortgage broker in the UK. And that was always our aspiration. And to do that, we need to get scale, we need to get bigger, we need to get profitable, we need to build relationships, we need to build a strong brand. And that's what we did. And so, kind of going back to your initial question about, was it a step down? It wasn't, because whilst I appreciate what you're saying about the actual job itself, being in mortgages was a byproduct of my own business, as opposed to being a mortgage broker. I look back and whilst, like I said, I've never paid myself that much, what I've done is create an inherent amount of value in the business that I now own.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I did have a question there. My brain's just completely gone. You got anything there, Rob?
Should we just have some really awkward silence whilst you're trying to think?
No, it was a really good question as well. That's really going to annoy me now.
It just goes to show that it is freestyle impromptu, isn't it? Which is great.
Yeah, no, most definitely.
Flow. Ying, all the way through building the business, you said that you were able to live off of that income from your buy-to-let portfolio, which I think is a really, really good point. It's a really important point.
Just remembered.
Write it down.
Write it down. Yeah. So that's important, because I think what happens is people get into property. It is a long-term game, but you can make money quite quickly if you're doing things like rent to rent or service to accommodation, things like that. And I always think you should reinvest your profits back into then actually building and building and building. So whilst the business is building, have you been building your portfolio continuously throughout that time, or have you got yourself to a stage where you're just happy where it is and it just...
Yeah, to be fair, I slowed down my property portfolio growth around 2007, 2008. I do the odd, I do developments, flips, but my kind of wealth is building the businesses. I also invest in other businesses and trying to find, equivalents of me, 20 years ago. So I'm less into property building, wealth building now compared to before. I've still got a portfolio, not nearly as big as it was kind of 2000 2007. I sold a good chunk of the portfolio during the credit crunch because I wanted to cash in and reinvest the proceeds into some operational businesses. But yeah, I'm still very passionate, about buy-to-let. I still think absolutely what you said there, spot on. It's a long-term game. Of course, you can make money, flips here, flip there, but people worry about the stamp duty. Real long-term investors are not too worried about saving 2 or 3% for the stamp duty, because that's a very small amount of saving in the grand scheme of things over a period of 10 or 15 years, especially when prices are probably artificially inflated because of the frenzy to get to make that purchase in the first place. So yeah, I mean, I've got a nice supplemental income for buy-to-let, but there was a pendulum swing away from property into more operational businesses and building wealth, within the buy-to-let business, aka Dynamo.
So what I was going to say is how powerful a property portfolio is in that term. So 2008 comes along. A lot of people took a lot of hit there. So for example, my dad used to run Connect Mortgage Services. So very similar, sort of sat in between the broker and the lender and all that sort of stuff. Being in that distribution market where the margins are so thin, when his business was affected by 2008, it goes under. Yeah. But he didn't have what you've got in regards to the backup in regards to the property portfolio. And it's really good to see that when we're talking on podcasts like this and hopefully inspiring people to really consider property as a long-term vision, is the security it can buy you in those downturns. Yeah. So 2008 was horrific, and it was horrific for property. A lot of landlords obviously struggled, but it gives you some sort of insulation, doesn't it, from the wider market? And without that, then you might not have been in the position that you was in, which is obviously incredible that you had that long-term sort of sight that if I can build a decent property portfolio, that's going to give me the tools to be able to buy it to build my business. Yeah. And then my business is going to be the thing that generates me value.
Well, property is often seen as quite certain buy-to-let property as counter-cyclical. And what I mean by that is that, when there are tough times, people can't afford to buy. So guess what? They rent. Or if they not only can they not afford to buy, they choose not to buy because they want the flexibility. So, that certainly helped me massively. Whilst it's been tough, COVID has been ridiculously tough for everybody. I would still say from a financial services perspective, the 2008 was significantly harder because, now we've got so much support from the government, which has helped many businesses survive. Lending volumes I would say pretty good, apart from the initial 2 or 3 months when it shut during lockdown 1. If anything, most people have been busier in recruiting. I appreciate aviation, hospitality have been really hit tough, but having a property portfolio, as long as you've got the vision for long-term growth, then I think it makes a wonderful tool and platform to help give you, additional income when you might need it most.
Yeah. Is there any advice that you would give to somebody that's thinking about starting a property portfolio?
Yeah, research, due diligence, if I can say the word. Yeah, I mean, it's so important that, at the moment, when I bought my first property in 97, I literally had a folder where I'd go into an estate agency face to face, and they'll give me one of those sheets, property particulars, and I put it in my folder, A4 ring binder, and I was able to refer back to it. I'd write my own little notes. I'd have my own checklist, and then I'd have a whole big folder which I would, be able to compare and have that comparables. Now, with a press of a button and Rightmove and all the various kind of sold prices and all sorts of land registry, you can do a lot of that research. So we're now blessed that, remotely sitting at our desk, we can basically do all of that research. You probably still want to, I personally think you need to physically see the property before you buy it. But you can do a lot more research than maybe, and therefore be much more efficient use of your time. But I think, it is very easy to be dragged in with the riches of property because, on the whole, you don't have to be that astute to make money in property, because long term it always goes up. There's always a high demand in it. We live in a small island, so land is in short supply. Houses are not being built enough, so the basic economics tells you that housing is always going to be in demand. But you want to outperform the market. You want to do better than that kind of steady curve up. And to outperform the market, you need to do your research, your due diligence. You need to understand what you're investing, and you need to be not emotional when you're making that investment. You can very easily, I talk about my mum and dad who are not property investors, then say, I wouldn't touch that property because it looked awful, and it was awful. But I'm not going to live in it, and I will go in there and I will renovate it to make it look a lot better, so it is attractive to tenants. So I think that's also important. And don't be afraid to walk away. If the price doesn't work for you, walk away. Don't get involved in that personal kind of feeling towards an asset.
Fantastic. Talking about that walkaways, actually, I saw you comment on a Facebook post the other day on a lady that was talking about a JV, and I thought I was going to send you a message because I thought you was absolutely brutal. But what you'd done is you'd broken down the reasons why. Can you remember the one where you said these are the numbers of why this deal doesn't work?
Yeah. It was an HMO in Brighton, wasn't it? Is that the one?
Yeah.
So I was as nice as possible about it. I just
don't get me wrong, you was polite.
Just got straight to the point.
I'm sitting there reading it, thinking,
so someone had a deal. I don't know how we got around to it. There's a thread and where I invest and live in Eastbourne, and then there was someone asking if I invested in Brighton, which I do. I've got property in Brighton. I don't actively look over there, I was saying, because my contacts aren't over there. So my contacts aren't over there. I don't know the market as well. It's going to be harder for me to find a deal over there than it would be here. So my effort is better spent where I know. But that's not to say if someone brought me a deal, put it right in front of me, and it was amazing, of course I'm gonna look at it and do it. So this person asked if I was open to JVs. So I asked for the numbers, but I also said, from the offset, that I wasn't interested in a JV because I don't do a joint venture with people I don't know. And that's nothing personal against that particular person. No. If anyone else who I don't know had asked me, the answer would have been the same. And it's going to be a while. I really, really want to know someone and have worked with them on other bits and bobs before I even consider getting into a joint venture with them. But yeah, so the figures were given, and she thought it was a really good deal. But then just when I broke down the figures, it was just shy of like 15% return or something. So, I wouldn't JV anyway, but then I look for about 30% return on my investments. And so to then halve 15% it just doesn't work. So I was really I was as nice as possible. I thought I was being as nice as possible. Is that she's probably going to struggle to get a joint venture partner on it as well, because she'll have the deal. The joint venture partner probably be expected to put all the money in. Yeah. So you're putting all of your money in for 7.5%, which is just no good.
Yeah. And I guess everyone has different thresholds of of what might be attractive to them. But it does surprise me, when I've been on the ground level, the amount of angel investment that there is and joint ventures that are going on, which are bypassing the traditional mortgage intermediary. That people do really kind of sign up to a JV without having even met the person. I know it's a lot harder now anyway, but even having a Zoom call with someone, they just, everyone's very trusting, which is wonderful. But, having lived and been in this world for a long time, I've been burnt myself, as successful as I have, I've definitely learned, life gives you every lesson you need to learn. I've been burnt by builders, and I've lost money here and there, but, and I've had to take it school fees, but it does surprise me how easy people are to part of money with sometimes not even strong contracts in place, and you've never met them. And, it's something that I always struggle to do. But, a lot of time it works, and a lot of time, absolutely there's nothing wrong or untoward with the other person. But I do think sometimes we're a little bit free with who we're JV with.
And it is, I think nowadays you're right. I was going to say, especially on things like Facebook, I see it so much, people looking for and asking for joint ventures, and they're willing to do it with anyone just to get the deal. And sometimes, I promise you, it's really, the deal isn't worth it sometimes.
I think people are so keen to succeed, aren't they? I think it comes from a really good place, doesn't it? All of this stuff. Obviously, you get the unscrupulous that are taking advantage in some situations, but I think in most cases, everyone's doing it with the best intentions because everybody wants to achieve something. And I think social media over the last 5-6 years has really embed sort of this luxury lifestyle, flick through Instagram, everyone's on a beach, and people are like, well, I want that. And then I want to get there as quickly as possible, which is the biggest, which I think is the biggest problem, is no one wants to go from A to Z. Everyone wants to go from A to B and think that's C. And I just think, I think it's an interesting time to see sort of some of this stuff starting to filter through.
Yeah.
But what I was going to ask,
Agree.
we'll sort of go back to mortgages and stuff. So are you seeing any trends? Obviously, you deal with thousands of buy-to-let applications and landlords and investors. Are you sort of seeing anything over the last sort of 6 months, or anything that you're sort of predicting that's coming to the market at the moment that?
Well, the stamp duty changes had clearly the desired impact, but the people it impacted more were the dinner party landlords, where 3% does make a difference to them, and the next time buyers. It didn't have a huge impact on the larger professional landlords, because large professional landlords are going, look, I'm going to step away with this while everyone's rushing for the property. And equally, the first time buyers, whilst they probably wanted to buy, they're probably the people that are impacted by furlough, redundancy, etc., etc. So the real beneficiaries, should I say, of the stamp duty incentive were the amateur landlords and the next time buyers. So I do think going forward, as and when the stamp duty comes to an end, which, at the moment it's 31st of March, there's talk it could be extended for another 6 weeks. And I think there's probably a reasonable chance that it will be extended, given, Rishi has extended most other things, given we weren't aware that the pandemic would still be as deep as it is, when we first introduced this last summer. But I do think that you'll see a real softening in prices after the stamp duty has happened, but for Q2 maybe. But you'll see professional landlords using that to go against the grain, and maybe as an opportunity to expand their portfolio. For mortgage brokers out there, I think if you recall 5 years ago, it was around the time that the extra percentage stamp duty charge was introduced for buy-to-lets or second homes. And a lot of those deals were put on 5-year fixed deals. So, again, I would urge people to look at their back book, because there's a lot of 5-year remortgages coming up in Q2 this year. So I think there'll be a pendulum shift. We've had a big surge of purchases. I think that we'll see us go back towards the remo market. And I think you'll see professional landlords coming out again once the prices start softening, to look for the longer term opportunity to build their portfolios.
Fantastic. And then actual specific strategies, are you seeing your typical residential buy-to-lets still obviously top of the game, or are you seeing a growth in HMO, service accommodation, all the different sort of strategies that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, HMOs is still massive. That's what you want for a yield chase. Everyone, good old accounting saying cash is king, and HMO gives you that cash and rental yield. Service accommodation, holiday lets are very popular. There still hasn't been a massive embracing of lenders in those areas. There's still there are more lenders now than there were, but you don't have to go that far back where no one would touch a property with Airbnb. The reality is most lenders were lending on it because they hadn't informed it. So, I think you're definitely seeing people chase some of the more high yielding properties, and HMOs is definitely an area. Limited company purchase hasn't probably taken off as much as people expected, but we're still seeing a trend towards that, because you can potentially leverage higher because of the stress test is more easier, and also you can borrow more money because of that product, and the interest is still tax deductible, unlike in a personal name. So I think there is a swing towards that. But a lot of these serviced accommodation, going back to what Rob says, a lot of this serviced accommodation stuff, which is your holiday lets or your short-term lets, and indeed the HMOs, rent to rent, a lot of that is not being funded by normal traditional mortgages. They're being funded by people with cash in the bank who are earning 0.00%, don't want to risk the stock market and go, well, I've got 100 grand to spend, let me invest it, and I ain't got the time, but I'll invest it in this property sourcer. And that is happening a lot. Much more than I actually realized, because I run the business at quite a high level with all the staff I've got. But more recently, I don't know if you guys are part of Clubhouse, the new social media platform and things, and I've been hearing people talk a lot, and it was quite surprising how much investment is going on, probably not using mortgage funds, but using kind of venture capital funds, or angel money or other investors' money. But they're going in those type of areas, aren't they? Your service accommodation, rent to rent, where there is a good return possible. I would just say, be cautious, and make sure you do your kind of homework first before you commit to anything.
Yeah, no, completely agree. What else? the other thing I was quite interested in when you mentioned that you invest in other businesses. So what sort of things are you looking for? What looks like an interesting business, and how can someone get money out of you?
It's probably the same question, as if you went on Dragon's Den. The business to a degree is less exciting. It's the person you're backing. So I guess I'm looking for someone who I think has got that kind of drive, hunger to succeed, as I did, when I first started, and still have now. So I'm not one of those angel investors who would invest massively in a tech business where the valuation before they've even sold their first item or service, they're valued at £2 million or something ridiculous like that. That you probably need to go to a true angel investor or VC company. For me, it's getting good operational businesses that can show the ability to scale and get a good return on the investment. And I'm very keen to explore opportunities where the founder has kind of that bit between his teeth, has a real clear vision and passion about what they do. If they've then got a good product or service, that's absolutely a good byproduct.
Can I ask what sort of things you've invested in the past?
Yeah, I've invested in a couple of range things. I'm in a DNA testing business, which is completely random. Because I'm given my roots, you might have realised that I'm quite curious about our heritage and things like that. I invested in the DNA business, and also I've invested in like a tech robotic business whereby you can show your clothes on an AI almost, so you don't have to go into a changing room, so you can pick clothes out. But that was a very small investment because the valuations were very, very high, but it was something that was in the midst of the pandemic where I thought something like this is going to take off because nobody can go and try clothes on because of the virus. But so and I've also invested in a cleaning business, so it is really quite random, but that was 5-6 years ago, and I exited a few years after that.
Brilliant.
So yeah, just like I said, I think for me the main focus is getting people who are passionate about what they do, and I guess in time, as I maybe move upstairs or move away from the business, my natural gravitation will be to other financial services and property businesses.
And on that, you say obviously you invest in property, you invest in businesses. I'm interested to know what else you invest in. So do you invest in things like stocks and shares? Do you invest in crypto? Is there anything else that you're investing in that you think people might be interested to hear about?
No, I'm not as diverse as maybe an IFA or someone would tell me I should be. I am very heavily property and operational businesses weighted. I invest in stocks and shares via a self-investment pension. So there is some exposure to stocks and shares, but no, I haven't jumped on the kind of the Bitcoin and blockchain area. Not because I don't believe in it. It's pure, like everything, I don't know enough about it to do that. And I think it's and that's a lot of that is because I'm very time poor with a family of 7, 5 children, myself and my wife, and a big business to run and property portfolio to look after. I also mentor a couple of business leaders, etc. So I'm very time poor. I'm sure there is plenty of money to be made on it, but for me to really commit to that, I'd want to make sure I fully understood it first, so I knew how it works and how I can make the money before I made the investment. But I'm sure for the right people, as we've already seen with the increase in price in Bitcoin recently, there's definitely money to be made.
Yeah, I love that, because so many people would just invest.
Yeah.
So they just see the news headlines, just see the numbers and think, well, just put money in it. But you see your analytical side of
that's
what
maybe
you
the
feel
accountant I've got. I'm people say, well, you must be really risk, you must be a real risk taker. I said, well, I'm definitely not risk averse. I don't think you can be in a business and be risk averse, but I'm a calculated risk taker. And I think that defines me very much. I wouldn't just, I'm not the person to go into a casino and just bet, unless it's money just for fun money type of thing.
Yeah.
That to me is not how you make money, because I have no control of whether I'm going to win or not. I need to be in control, and I need to. I can increase my control in investment by doing that research, that understanding that, and that's why, But at the same time, there's also that gut feel. But some people just do it on gut. I can't just do it on gut. But I have that gut feel. But at the same time, my head's got to believe that it's right.
Yeah, my new gut feel, because I do sometimes do a gut feel, is sports cards.
Right.
It's in like like baseball cards, American football cards and stuff. So it was literally a friend of mine posted something about football cards, as in soccer. And I started looking into it, and there was like 1,400% growth over the last year in football cards. And I'm like, I want a bit of that.
Yeah.
So I've gone out and I got myself some cards and stuff, and I'm like, that's going to be my little fun, completely risk, and just going to buy some cards, put them away somewhere.
Is that physical cards?
Physical cards.
Just really, wow.
Yeah, honestly, and again, with the baseball cards and American football cards, obviously the history and that stuff comes into play. But some of those cards are worth millions.
Wow.
And you're thinking that's just a piece of paper that someone's kept for a long time with a picture on it. But with soccer cards, they've only just started coming out. So you think only a couple of years ago did they really started making them. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give myself some of them.
It might not be you that benefits. It might be your next generation that benefits from that one.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was talking to a mate of mine this morning. I said that's exactly what it is when I have kids and they're old enough, I'm going to show them that, and then we'll find out how much they're worth, and then hopefully they might have kids, and like that whole thing, and just do it like that. But that is all gut.
I inherited some stamps. The original physical collection of money was stamps, wasn't it? My dad has got a stamp collection that he passed down to me that was goes back to like 1940 something. And some of the stamps that go there, 100 years old now, and I've never got it valued, but I've often looked at it and reflected and thought, yeah, that must be worth a little bit now, and it's been stuck in the attic with some other memorabilia.
You could have a whole Del Boy moment with them.
I know. Just got to make sure it's the right decision. I'm not sure I'll go to Peckham to sell them though.
Yeah. The other thing I really wanted to talk to you about was your book.
Yes.
So talk to me through the book. So what made you decide to write one? What's it about? And just give us some information on it.
Yeah, my mum sadly passed, as I mentioned, November 2018, which was quite a traumatic experience because she was sick in Asia. We knew she was poorly and we wanted to get her back to the UK. We got her from Malaysia to Singapore, where my sister lives. And then she fell sick there, and we had to effectively fly an air ambulance back from there to here, which, you can imagine, how expensive that was. It was very, very costly. And she was on life support, flying, 6,000 miles around the world. Went straight, picked up from an airport in an ambulance, straight to UCLH in London, and straight onto an ICU unit. And, I'm just thankful it didn't happen during this COVID period. But that was 2 years ago, and she sadly didn't make it. She passed in November 18, and I thought, my children, my oldest was about 13 or 14 at the time, still relatively young, and I thought, I wanted to do something that kind of passed on my knowledge. To leave a legacy, and that's when I started writing the book. It took about 4 or 5 months, and it was just before the twin girls were born. Twin girls were born in May 19, so that was the period, and I finished it just before then. It then took about a year to publish because Wiley are the publishers. It's a little bit like raising money for venture capital. You've got to kind of pitch the book to people, and I didn't want to do a self-publish because I know a lot of people self-publish books. I mean, anyone can self-publish a book now. I wanted to go for a publisher which basically chucks away all the profit, but at least then, I don't have to worry about it, and just, they get on with it. And Wiley really liked what they saw, and Wiley's a massive publisher of business books and things. So I was really jumped at the opportunity, and, very proud of how that's gone. It was never about sales. It was never about how much money I'm going to make, because I don't think you make a huge amount of money. I'd probably say I'm going to lose money on the book, but it was more about, doing something that I felt passionate about, pass on legacy to my children, and to help others and inspire others. And it's about being the best version of yourself. I think there's lots of books of how you become a millionaire, how you do this, how you do that. But we don't all have the makeup or the DNA to be a millionaire, or the mindset to be a millionaire. And I don't think a book can necessarily give you that. So this book is about drawing on my own experiences and how I've learned from my own life lessons to be successful. And it's about, you being the best version of yourself and drawing on your own things that have gone wrong in your life and how you can learn from them. And I've been overwhelmed really by how much it's inspired people. And, I go on LinkedIn, and even over the weekend, and the book's been out 4 or 5 months, a few people posted of how it's impacted them. I've had some really heartwarming reviews, people reaching out to me, sending me messages directly and saying how it's impacted their lives and how they've changed things. So, that makes me really happy because, I really enjoy giving. I'm passionate about helping people, and that this book is definitely, a way to do that.
And how did you come up with the title? So it's Don't Push Too Many Trolleys.
Yeah, so when I was
what's
16
the
years
lesson?
old, I used to work at Asda. I had a job for, as you'd expect, with the background I had, I wanted to earn money at a young age. So I went to Asda. My first day, I, wanted to be efficient with my use of time. And rather than just bringing one trolley, take it to the front, getting another trolley, how many times you've got to go up and down, even with 5 or 6 trolleys, it's not really good. So I thought I'd go and push lots of them. I can't remember the exact amount, but it was, well in the teens, probably over 20. Lost control of the bugger, and I smashed into a car, and I got hauled into the checkout manager, and I felt almost quite proud that they changed the law, I think, after I did that, and you could only have a maximum of 8 trolleys. Of course, nowadays you got those fancy kind of forklift truck type things that pick them all up. So that's where it comes from, and it's a little bit like a don't spin too many plates, don't juggle too many balls, because I've done that a number of times, and I'm a big believer in that, and it's why when I set my business up, it was very much buy-to-let focus. People saying, Ying, you should do residential, Ying, you should do this, but I wasn't ready to do it at that time. You could go to Amazon now and they sell everything. But when they started out, what were they? They were the best seller of books, and they became the best seller of books before they branched out. You go to iPhone, Steve Jobs, you could put all of his products probably on one table, because so I believe you need to get that niche right, and you need to not to do too many things because you can be distracted. So that's kind of the message of the book, is that don't take on too much, don't try to do lots of things, focus on one thing, and make sure you do that well first.
Fantastic lesson. I'm really looking forward to reading it. So is there an audio book version?
There is. It's not my voice, because Wiley kind of got some American chap. So when I've listened to it, I've turned off quite quickly because it doesn't sound like me. But I'm sure someone who hasn't heard my voice has spoken to me. But there is. I can drop me an email, whatever. I'll send you the link for it. Alternatively, I'll be delighted to send you both a hard copy as well.
No, thank you for no, most definitely.
Yeah, it'd be wicked. Thank you.
Yeah, no, because we love sort of self-education, self-improvement, and all those sort of stuff. So 100%. But we're both audio book listeners. And,
yeah.
And I'm halfway through Obama at the moment.
Oh, really?
It's 30 hours long.
You'll be pleased. Mine's only about 7 hours, I think.
That's about right. That's about, but 30 hours. But the thing is, because it's Obama, usually what I do is for some of the stuff, I might times it by 2 and just listen to it like really quickly and take bits out as I can. But as it was Obama, I'm listening to every single
word.
Yeah, and it's a very good book.
I've heard it's an amazing book.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be a hard act to folloll if you read mine after this. But,
no, not at all. That is complete level peggings to me.
Yeah, very kind of you. But yeah, like I said, I'll send you. Drop me an email. I'll send you a link for the audio, and certainly if you want the hard copies to add to your shelf, I'd certainly be fine.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So what's next? What's the plans for the future? What are you looking towards?
Yeah, great question. I've been a very much hands-on leader for years now. I'm 45 years old now, so I want to give someone else the opportunity to do that. So I'll probably take a step upstairs and direct from afar, so to speak, strategically. I think from a business perspective, I do think that the world is going to be going down a far more tech-focused route. I do believe that if anyone's not willing to evolve at the moment, they're going to struggle to be around in 3 to 5 years' time. So I think it's important. I love using the Iron Man analogy, where you need tech not to replace the human, but to make them faster, stronger, and more efficient in what they do. So from a business perspective, we want to take the business down that kind of tech-focused route, and complete our digital transformation we started when we rebranded. But that's going to take time, and we were held back a little bit over the last 6 or 9 months for obvious reasons. And from a personal perspective, I want to get someone else in the helm, and I can take a step back and manage one person instead of 100 people, and family's everything to me. I mentioned I've got my wife and 5 kids. My 2 twin girls are coming up to 2 years old now, so they're really starting to appreciate and great interaction. I want to make sure I spend as much time with them as possible, because you could start up a business, right? And no matter what you say about balance and sacrifice, you have to make some sacrifices. Although I choose to make that sacrifice, but by making those hard working sacrifices at the beginning of the journey, it's allowed me to be in a stage now where I don't have to. I can bathe the girls at 5:30, and I can go home, put them, in bed, and read them a book and that type of stuff. But I couldn't do that at the beginning of the journey because you're building up a business, and that requires time, effort, and graft. So yeah, I want to make sure I continue to spend as much time with my family and get that balance right. There's no point working hard and having all millions in the bank if you don't get it to spend with those that you love. So that balance is important. So yeah, I think getting the balance with the family, maybe taking a slight step back from the business in time over a couple of years, and from the business perspective, to really go down this, continue to pursue the digital transformation route.
Do you think there will ever be robo advice for mortgages?
Well, I mean, I think at some stage there will be, for sure, because if you can send someone out of the solar system and, we're going to be able to land on, they're talking about Elon Musk is talking about us going to the Mars in the next 5 years. I mean, if we can send someone to Mars, surely we can arrange a bloody mortgage. But, I think, it's not going to be happening anytime soon. I think mortgage brokers out there can rest assured that they've definitely got a role for time. But, 100 years time, 50 years time, robots could take over surgeons. Do you need doctors still? Because robots, we don't know, but the way technology is moving, it wouldn't surprise me, right? Just think of what technology is doing to so many things now. So it's absolutely possible. In the short term, no, but of course, medium, long time, who knows?
Yep. No, good way to finish off. give the mortgage brokers out there a little bit of hope.
Yeah, exactly that.
But also what they need to be doing is they need to be taking their profits from the business and buying buy-to-lets with them, right?
Yeah.
When that comes.
Spot on. Exactly. You got your passive income there.
Because robots won't take over tenancies.
They definitely won't.
People still need to live.
Humans still need to live.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how do people get in touch with you and follow your journey?
There's loads of ways, really. I mean, they can LinkedIn. I'm quite active on, so they can reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn, DM me. I'm really open. I've been quite active in Clubhouse recently. I've done a couple of rooms. Did a room with Dame Kelly Holmes yesterday, which was amazing. So you can reach out to me on there, or DM me on Instagram, or just email me directly, ying.tan@dynamo.co.uk. I'm definitely someone who's happy to help and assist people on the journey, and teach what I can to them and help them on their road to success. Because, like I said, I think that is something that I believe quite deeply about, given, I've been very fortunate in my journey, and people have helped me. Certain things, I haven't talked about them, but, I got a break at UBS, Union Bank of Switzerland, because my sister's my brother-in-law's best man at his wedding got me work experience there. And I worked there for free. And the first house I bought in Wimbledon, the first house I bought to live in Wimbledon, was sold to me by my sister's friend as well. And those were two massive pivotal moments that, I think absolutely gave me the funds and the impetus to go on to achieve where I am today. And I still to this day go back to that people and thank them for them. They often don't fully understand why I'm thanking them for it, and they don't think that they've had much to do with my success. But I see those points as really quite pivotal. And I go back to even my PE teacher. My PE teacher, empowered me to be the captain of my football team, my cricket team, my basketball team. And whilst I weren't the most vocal kid, he knew I was very focused. I led by example, et cetera, and that gave me the confidence to be the leader I am today. So, there are those pivotal moments that, and I think I've probably done that with other people in my 25-year working career history, that, I've given nuggets and they've gone on to use that and gone on to be great and successful things, and that makes me very proud and very happy.
Amazing. No, thank you so much. What we'll do is we'll add the links to the different places people can catch you on Facebook and on the actual post, etc.
Sure.
But no, I love that. That was
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. You really appreciate that, mate.
No, appreciate you coming on.
Not at all, Rob, and not at all, Tom. Really enjoyed spending time with you, and love the free-flowing conversation. And best of luck with your podcast, but most importantly in life in general. And please stay in touch.
No, thank you so much. Just before we sign off, just anyone that's listening that does want to get in touch with us, you can. All the socials again at Podcast Property. You can also follow us on YouTube now. That we've only just started the YouTube, so there's not a massive amount of views on there. But if you want to see our pretty faces, then that's the best place to catch us. And like, subscribe, share, all of the sort of generic influencer type and end of spiels. But no, thank you so much for listening. I hope you really enjoyed it, and see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Property Investors Podcast. The information contained in the podcast is not to be used as financial advice. Everybody's situations and goals are different, and you should always complete your own due diligence on investments and seek personalized financial advice from a qualified person. Feel free to contact the show for professional recommendations. Visit propertyinvestorspodcast.com.